Can you hear me, Skylar? Amazing. All right.
All right, it's 5:31. We're going to call the meeting to order. Skylar, roll call, please.
Mr. Blair,
Here.
Mr. Chancho, Ms. Grosh, Ms. Gutierrez,
Here.
Mr. Hall.
So please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For the consideration of additional agenda items, I'd like to add that we'd like to make a motion to excuse Don Ciancio for tonight's meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of excusing Don from the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Don is excused. Are there any other additional agenda items? Is there any public comment? Come on up. Yeah, I should. Also, just before we get started there, just a reminder for our board members that this meeting is being live streamed. So please remember to turn on your microphones, and all guests addressing the board have 3 minutes for public comment.
Art Debuse, 9060 Rampart Street here in Federal Heights. I got something to throw out for you, just an idea and something to chew on. As a grandparent and a great-grandparent, I don't have any kids in the district anymore, but I've got grandchildren all over Texas and great-grandchildren, 11 of them. So I was wondering if there'd be some way that they have to be set up carefully because it could be abused badly, to where us grandparents could get certificates at the resident rate for our grandchildren or great-grandchildren, a limited number per year or something, but just something to throw out there. If you creek doesn't rise and you behave yourself, and the good Lord willing, you'll be great-grandparents someday too. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. I'm already a great-grandparent. Just one. Not a great-grandparent, grandparent.
Oh, grandparent, yeah. I got 8 of those, and I got 11 of the great.
There you go. Are there any other public comment? You guys will have to excuse us. We don't have Nicole here, and without Nicole, we're a little lost. So she usually has everybody sign in, and then she hands me the form that says who's here to talk. We don't have her tonight because she's not feeling well. She never misses. So we're missing a key component to our board meetings, so we'll struggle through.
That's about like a right arm missing.
Correct.
Good evening, the board and the staff and every visitors. Couple things is, unfortunately, I have a regret of something I did. And it's only because of some bad things that have happened to me recently, is I regret that we're having Frisbee golf in Cammonish Park. I've been here and I've walked my dog, and I go walking and I spend a lot of time in the park and enjoy it. It's one of the things I do. But I get these Frisbee people think that they own the thing. And they start yelling at me because I'm walking around out there. And they get rude. They give me the one finger salute. And they get belligerent. And this has been 3 times now in the last 3 or 4 months now. And then they take, and I've mentioned this before, they bring their dogs and cut them loose. And so I've got my dog, and I've got bags for his Tootsie Rolls. So I do dog patrol, and I also keep him on a leash. So I'm regretting that we're having all this Frisbee golf course because of the rude people. If I'm out there walking around, they don't own the dadgum thing. I've been here since 1974. So that's something I just wanted to bring forward. And then also, to back this thing up from when I was here last time, just real quick, is if this podium was here. Right here, I can see these guys, and I can see these guys without my back to them. So, bring that back up again. I know the connections are over there, but that would be nice to be able to see the staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Are there any introductions or presentations? So now I'm looking for a motion to approve the Treasurer's Report of January 2025.
I move that the Board of Directors of Highland Hills Park and Recreation District approve the Treasurer's Report as presented.
A second?
We have a motion and a second. Discussion on the Treasurer's Report.
Skylar, any comments on variances?
Yeah, Mike, we had spoken previously about the Waterworld revenues exceeding the projected budget by 500,000, which is a great thing. Maybe Bob and I can tag team this, but the way we do our Waterworld pass sales, it's season by season. So October, November, December sales show up in January. You'll see that reflected in the KPI report as well. But we had a great month of January with great sales, so we're tracking well ahead of what we projected at this point. That tends to level out over time, but really good start to the year.
Skylar, you confused me because you said that October, November, and December sales show up in January, but we have a fiscal year end of December 31st. So how does that work?
So I'll answer that, Margaret. So
Okay.
we do a lot of sales in December for holiday seasons, and certainly the season pass sales once the park closes. All the season pass sales are for the 2025 season. So we basically accrue all of those sales from November to the end of the year, and then we book them as deferred revenue at the end of the year. So then the revenue books to the appropriate year fiscally in January of 2025. So what you see accruing, or what you see on the books for January, is made up of sales from October through December.
Got it. So it's a recognition of that revenue that
Yes.
so we got the cash in October, November, December. We recorded it as deferred revenue. When January hit, we released all of it.
Into
from
actual
deferred
revenue.
Into actual
Yep.
revenue. Okay. And that deferred revenue is what drove that spike of 500,000 up?
No, I actually think what drove the spike, there are a couple of timing issues. So we went live with season pass sales earlier in the fall than we had the previous year. So, and then we've got just this amazing marketing team that really pushed those sales out there. So I think a lot of it is we had increased sales for the end of the fiscal year, end of '24 compared to the end of '23. The marketing push the previous year really was later on. To Skylar's point, we do expect that that will level off. It's just that people purchased them earlier in 2024 for 2025 than they did in 2023 for 2024.
When will we know if there was an actual increase in those
Probably by the time we
sales?
get to May, would you say, Bob?
Correct.
Okay, so all of these fluctuations and timing differences and deferred revenues will moderate, and we'll be able to tell if there is a real increase period over period in Waterworld Splash Pass revenues or whatever they are in May.
Yeah, I would say generally by opening day, that's going to be the bulk of our sales, though we will have some after opening day. But we'll have a very good idea whether we have an increase. I do expect that there's going to be an increase beyond last year either. We also had a price increase across the board to the different levels of passes, so that will account for some of the increase in revenue as well. Bob, if you want to throw anything in, feel free.
No, I think we're good.
So it's a little bit like when you put something on layaway and buy it for Christmas, and then you go and get it later, and that's when the sales hits the store.
Yes, that's correct, and I actually will throw in one other thing. So we do the same, it's not the same magnitude of dollar amount, but we also sell golf rounds and golf player passes again at the end of the year. Those will be recognized as deferred revenue for '24 and then actually hit the books as revenue in '25.
Any other questions or discussion?
Hey, Skylar, on the golf courses revenue line, if you could just fix the math, the formula and the favorable to unfavorable to budget. It should only be about, oh no, that is right, sorry, my apologies. So budget was 2,500, but the golf course revenue came in at 225,000? Is that right? Why would the budget only be 2,500 for golf course revenue?
Well, as you know, it's seasonal at this time of the year, so it's hard to project if the weather will cooperate or not,
I
but
figured the golf course was going to be covered with snow during the month of January, and it just wasn't the case.
yeah.
And again, Mike, part of that, what you see, the 224, is going to be those sales that were made in December carried over to January.
Anything else?
No.
All those in favor of approving the January 2025 Treasurers Report, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved? Looking for a motion for approval of meeting minutes from February 11th, 2025.
I move that the Board of Directors of Highland Hills Park and Recreation District approve the minutes of board meeting of February 11th, 2025 as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion on the board minutes. Hearing none. All those in favor of approval of the meeting minutes, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Communication and correspondence to the board.
We have this item.
Yeah.
So, Mr. President, there is an email that came in to the board. It's not an agenda item. So per our processes, we did just make a copy of that and include it in all of the board's folders, but no action on the email is required.
What is the response to the individual for this? So,
The response is listed above there, Margaret.
okay.
So this is more just for board information.
I'm going to take a moment to read it then. Okay.
So just to note, the board did receive an email that was not about an agenda item, so the board shares those. There'll be a response, there was a response, and we move forward. Yvonne, it's time for the executive director update.
Thank you, Mr. President. So you all have a copy of my March 2025 report in your packets. Just want to point out a couple of items on there. One is we had some discussion about what project budgets were. So you'll see that item number 1 is talking about the status of the Phase 1 improvement project at Carol Butts Park. So just as a reminder, the total budget on that was just over $1.5 million. It is in permitting right now. The construction fences are up. And we hope to have the project completed before the end of the summer. That's, as a reminder, those are the pickleball courts, as well as expanded parking and landscaping. And then on item number 2, this is the Phase 2 of the sports complex. Again, we've been talking about this one for a bit. The fields themselves will be ready, accessible for the league play to start by April 1st. And then the remainder of the project, which will be like the playground, the additional parking, landscaping, et cetera, that will be done from now until the summer. The shelters may lag into the fall because we had a delay on permitting, or we continue to have a delay on permitting on that one. And our shelter manufacturer won't start the production until they have the permit in hand. So we're trying to continue to stay on top of that one and speed up whatever we can with that permitting process. So, and again, as a reminder, the budget for that project was $4.5 million. We did get a 60% grant match from Adams County to go towards that project, so that grant match is $2.7 million. So we are completely on track to have that project come in at budget and potentially even below budget. We will be coming back, right now we're looking at enhancements to the lighting over there, so we probably will be coming back in April with a recommendation for enhancements to the field lighting over there. And then
I have a question with regard to that one. So the permitting delays that are happening now, how are they impacting the final timeline of the project? So was it supposed to be done in X month and now it's going to be done in Y month, or what is the impact?
so we had hoped for the entire project to be done over the summer. What this is impacting is just the shelters. So we expect the entire project to still be done over the summer with the exception of the shelters. We'll have the foundations in, we'll be ready for them to go up, and they actually go up pretty quickly. It's just that they're pre-manufactured shelters that the manufacturer won't start producing until they have that permit in hand. Does that make sense? And so likely the shelters will be in the fall.
When do we think we're going to get the permits?
We thought we were going to get them several weeks ago. So the general contractor's been following up. We've been trying to help them with follow-up on our own. We have not been successful yet, but we're continuing to monitor it.
And the permitting body is Adams County?
City of Federal Heights on this one.
City of Federal Heights. So the guy's next door. Okay,
Should we walk over and visit them?
yeah.
Well, we try to have a very good relationship with the City of Federal Heights and particularly with the inspectors and the permitting people, because we need them for other things that we do. So we are continuing to follow up as best we can.
And I can add just a little bit more detail. The problem was with the wind load on the shelters. The city engineer did not like the wind load calcs from the manufacturer, so they asked for those to be redone. So it basically got kicked back to engineering. So that's what slowed the process down. It was no oversight by staff or anybody. It just, hey, we don't like these numbers, redo them. So had to go back, and that is circling back around.
So City of Federal Heights was doing their job, and we're going back to them.
Right?
Okay.
So they just were checking the numbers, didn't like them, and so they asked for them to be redone.
Thanks for that additional color.
So the only other item I wanted to highlight is number 4, just letting you know that we are in full on swing with hiring. About twice a week, we have boatloads of kids showing up at the front step for interviews and excited to work for a summer job. So really pleased with the number of applicants that we've received this year. I think we can be, what I heard the staff say is we get to be a little more picky this year than we've been in the last several years. So we're excited about that and looking forward to having a great team. A couple of positions that are always a challenge for us are kind of landscaping and maintenance positions, so those will lag behind the rest of them. The ones that are filled very quickly are the 14-year-olds, which I believe we've already stopped the applications on those. So again, really excited about the pool of applicants that we're getting, and expect there to be absolutely no problem with being fully staffed by opening day at Waterworld. And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
It's nice to know that we're looking at a lot of high-quality applicants and have a good choice. That's really always nice to have. And Alan, I see that number 1 green and number 2 T, but we're also working on new tees on 1 gold and 1 blue, and I've heard that maybe on 13 gold too.
Yeah, we want to clean up the messes we have, and then we're gonna take a hard look at 13. We're coming up with a plan now to do some improvements over there.
Thank you.
I would like to know, so so thanks to everybody who attended the cornhole tournament. It was a great success. Just wondering, many thanks to Lori Morales for chairing that and all the work that she put in. Also, many thanks to Nicole and the staff at the Sports Center and all the work they did. Much appreciated. How much money did we raise?
I knew you were going to ask that question, and I'm not ready for it, Margaret, but I will get that information to you. We haven't done a recap on it yet.
Okay, thank you.
It was a very nice event, and we had lots of foundation board members that helped out and volunteered, and some friends of the foundation. And it was full, right, Lori? Completely sold out. So congratulations, thank you. It was a fun event. We're at the KPI report.
I do have a question on it, and it's just the presentation of it. So when I'm looking at the month of February, and I'll just go to the first metric. So there was a decline of 2. Is that a decline of 2 from the prior month or from the prior period?
So that first one is from the prior year,
So February 2023. So
February
it's-
2024 had 2 more than this 2025 number, so
Okay,
that's
so
why it's a negative.
when I'm looking at these KPIs and I'm looking at the month, the comparison is year over year, not prior month.
Correct.
Okay. I will say that Kelly and Jenny have been very busy. And thanks to them, you can just see what their level of communications and their work has done to the social media engagements and other media engagements. Truly, it's very impressive. Just so you guys know, it's a really big increase.
Any other questions or comments on the KPI report? Moving on to our legal report. And Allison is online. She's in some exotic location somewhere, supposedly working, but she most likely is. So Allison, it's the legal report now.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes and yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm beaming in from Telluride. I'm sorry I can't be with you tonight, but I won't lie. It's pretty nice up here. So there's a legal report in your board packet. Happy to answer any questions, and then also just want to mention that I'd like to talk about that property protection initiative and the use restriction separately. So if there are questions on the other matters in the legal report, why don't we start there? Saving them all for the property.
Yeah, I didn't have any
Protection
questions on
initiative.
the legal report, the general legal report. Anybody else on that? So we'll move to the property protection use restriction. Allison, any highlights there for us to look over real quick?
Sorry, Warren, can you repeat that?
Yeah, we're moving toward, on your report under property protection initiative use
Okay.
restriction. So if there's anything in particular you want to call to our attention?
Okay, so my legal report gave kind of the background and the context for the use restriction that I believe you all received today.
So is there another document in addition to your legal report that we received?
Yes, Yvonne sent out an email this afternoon with a copy of a draft declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions.
So I have not checked my email because I was at work, so I have no idea what that says or what that is. So I'm not prepared to talk about it. So can you tell us what it is?
Here, you want to borrow my copy?
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't need to have read it, word for purposes of our discussion tonight. This is the first draft. I just thought it would be helpful for the board to see what this use restriction will look like. We've been talking in generalities for a while, but this is, here it is, in draft form. And I think it'll make it easier to conceptualize, having this in front of you. So this is a covenant that would be recorded against the properties identified by the board. We've been referring to them as, your key properties, and they're listed in the legal report. But, we subject to approval of the board, and I want to get your input on that tonight. And the way this covenant would work is it would be run to the benefit of a third party who, potentially would be the Highland Hills Foundation. Still, in very early discussions with them, but just conceptually, the third party would be able to enforce this covenant. And if you go to paragraph 2 of this document called restricted uses, this is the heart of it. This is the use restriction part that says the property can only be used for these purposes. And it's highlighted in yellow because, this is where we, I want the board to think about this and we can discuss it. And, nothing's happening tonight on this. This is really just something for you to chew on. And so the way we have this written right now is that this particular one is for Clear Creek. The property would only be used for a publicly accessible park, including but not limited to open spaces, grass fields, playgrounds, trails, recreational areas for general public use, or other public uses allowed by special district statutes applicable to the district. So that's just an example of one of the ways that the use of these key properties can be restricted.
Allison, what would be the process for making this happen? So do we need, what type of board approval is required? What type of, so we have a list of recommended properties. Does that require board approval? Should this be going through a special committee? What is our process to move this forward? Or just these board meetings are the means by which we do it?
It's a little hard for me to hear you, Margaret. Skylar, I can hear you crystal clear. Same with Yvonne.
Can you hear me now? Better?
It's better. Are you closer to your mic now?
I'm swallowing my microphone now.
Why don't you try mine? Maybe mine works better.
How about that?
It's better.
Allison, can you hear mine better?
Oh yeah, you are crystal clear.
Okay, so
Yvonne, do you want to?
Margaret has asked, and make sure I get the question correctly, what is the process to move this forward in terms of, I believe, identifying the properties as well as making sure that the process goes through? Is this a committee work or is this board work to be done at board meetings?
Okay, got it. So our next steps would be to finalize this document, and we would have one document for each of the properties that you want to make subject to this use restriction. So finalizing this document, we need to get legal descriptions for each of these properties, which we're in the process of doing. We need to know from the board the properties that you want to encumber. So my legal report has a list of the 7 key properties. And so if the board has changes to this list, it would be helpful to know that sooner rather than later.
Allison, can you hear me? Mm-hmm. Would we need a board resolution or a motion identifying those properties that we're going to place a use restriction on before we place the use restriction on? Like, do we need to approve that list as a board?
Absolutely. So once the board takes action to approve this, I would recommend you do this by resolution to create a very clear record. And that could be done, as soon as the April board meeting. I mean, if you're ready to move forward. But for our purposes tonight, if the board can just discuss this list. And if you want to direct me to remove a property or add a property, I mean, that would help me get to the point of bringing a resolution to you with these final use restrictions to consider for approval.
I think it would be helpful so that people know how we got to the list. So the list that we have, the reasoning behind that. And so maybe we could elaborate on that first.
Are you thinking like in a resolution or just having discussion about
Just
that?
having a
Right.
discussion of how we've identified those properties that we would want to place use restrictions on. Like, what were the considerations?
I think staff could provide some clarity to that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So this is a list that we have been talking about for quite some time. I think that the board itself when we started these discussions, talked about how do we protect the really important enterprises, which would be Waterworld, Adventure Golf, the golf course. As we further talked about it, we thought there probably should be some other properties that, as long as we're doing this, that we consider. And so we did pull in the two regional parks to this. So you'll see Cavendish Park on there, as well as Carol Butts Park. We have carved out two properties that we have discussed, which would be the Ice Center, because we are not 100% owners of the Ice Center. We own that jointly with the City of Westminster. And so that couldn't be a property transaction without another party involved. So that's why they're not on this list. And then we also have not included the Highland Hills Sports Center at this time because it is already encumbered because of the financing that exists on that. So there is already basically a lien on that property. So that's kind of where we got to where we got. We know that there are other properties throughout the district. I mean, there are a lot more park properties, but we felt like that these were representative of what the board has talked about as being kind of the most important ones to protect in perpetuity. So certainly, and actually, as I'm looking at this, we probably need to add the fitness center on here as well. But the fitness center so far, I believe, is also encumbered with a lease purchase at this time, but that would come in once that's paid off as well.
And so the reason we excluded Highland Hills Sports Center is because of the lease purchase obligations that are encumbered by that property. It could cause additional work if we made any changes to that deed because there's a leasehold mortgage or something on that. Is that the thought process?
It's not as clean, and certainly Allison can chime in as well. We don't feel like that's as immediate. It's already somewhat protected by virtue of the deed restriction against it from the lease. So it's not an immediate one, but these others basically, I would say, are the most important and yet most vulnerable properties.
And again, there's no land that really open space that goes with, there's no open space that goes with the sports complex, the Legacy Fit. It's just a building sitting on a plot of land. It's not like a park.
That's not added, that's purposely not added to this list. We wouldn't put as I understand it, we wouldn't put a use restriction on the Highland Hills Fitness Center because maybe 30 years down the road, its highest and best use might be something other than a fitness center.
That's a good summary. Again, all these properties listed mainly compose of a lot of open space.
Correct, Mike. My understanding and your understanding are, I think, the same. Is that your understanding, Danny and Warren? That it's where we're proposing to put these use restrictions on are those properties where there's open space, parks, and that in the foreseeable future is what their highest and best use would be going forward.
Yes.
So I think these are what you would consider the premium attractions or properties of the district. And so this list makes good sense. I think the board in our discussions have talked about how do we protect our property, and we've kind of had a general list. So I think it's appropriate to have the discussions here at the board level and not in a committee. And also knowing that at any time we can come back and add a use restriction to a property if and when that becomes something that we feel we need to do. But this would be a good starting spot to try to get some of the use restrictions put into place. And I think the foundation is a great way to identify a third party. I think they also feel similarly about our properties, and that was a good kind of a way to work around having that third party to enforce these types of use restrictions. I think that's a good selection.
And Allison, I want to make sure I am understanding this properly. And the use restrictions could be changed in the future on this, but what it would do, it might require a public vote. So we would have to get the endorsement of all of our constituents if we wanted to remove the use restriction and change it. So it would be, the public would have a say in it as well. Is that right?
Yes. And that's in paragraph 6 of this covenant that you received today. That says this declaration shall not be amended unless approved by the declarant, which is you, the district, and a majority of constituents within your service area held by a public vote.
Thank you.
So Allison, are you asking us to give you some direction as far as moving forward with the legal descriptions and working on that particular list? Do you want us to identify other areas for you to look on? What would you like us to do tonight, knowing that we're not going to formally approve the use restrictions until we've got some of this deeper, some of the deeper information on it?
Sure. So I mainly just wanted to take your temperature, get the board's feedback on this concept. See if you like the concept. Are you happy with this list? If you are, we'll work to finalize this document, get those legal descriptions, and bring this back to you in a form where you can consider it for approval.
I like I like the use restrictions because it provides some assurance as a board member that in the future, our parks will remain parks. And it makes it much more difficult for changes to be made to that property from a developer or anybody coming in, and that would put apartments on Kamenish Park. This way it preserves it so that if that happens, that's going to require a public vote to make that, to have that approval. So it serves a very good purpose of keeping our parks for posterity.
Yeah, I'd like the idea of the use restrictions as well. Mike?
It was my original, it was my original idea. Again,
So you're changing your mind?
No, it was my original, that, again, there was a risk to the district because of past activity, things could be sold without other consideration just by a majority of the board.
Yeah, and I think all of us had that, and that was the reason I was elected to this board, is for this very purpose, is to protect the assets going forward. So it serves that purpose.
Yep, I absolutely agree.
So I'm asking the board before we talk to Yvonne, so she would work with the attorneys then to work with Allison, that we're ready to have you go ahead and start some of this work for the use restrictions. Am I reading you, everybody right on this? Danny and Margaret and Mike?
Aligned?
Yes.
Yep.
Everybody's aligned, so that's kind of the direction that we're asking Yvonne to do, to work with Allison and move forward. And these lists of properties, knowing that it's not finalized, but it's close. Is there anything else the board would like to see added to this list?
Again, I think just staff, to look at the inventory of all the assets, consideration of use in the future, and make sure we have a good list. Again, we can always add to the list, but let's make sure we got, apply an 80-20 rule and get the majority of the things covered.
Okay, we'll continue work on it. Allison, did you have anything else that we needed?
No, that was it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Allison, now go skiing.
And thank you very much for all your work on this, Ellison. I really appreciate it. Your creativity and options made this all possible, so thank you.
Yes, thank you, Allison. Old business? Don't see any. New business, we have a Waterworld gondola control system replacement. That's in your packet as well. I'm going to look for a motion on that, but before we get into it, we found out some new information today that the actual repairs might increase a little bit because of some switches. So as we look for that motion, I'm going to ask that we actually look at approving it in the motion, that we would approve it, but with an additional $10,000 to cover any additional fees. So looking for a motion for that.
I can do this. I move that the Board of Directors of Highland Hills Park and Recreation District award the bid to Electramic LLC in the amount not to exceed $353,000 for the gondola control drive and communications project, and authorize the executive director to execute the contract on behalf of the district.
Second.
So we have a motion that includes that extra $10,000 that the board members have in their packets. Any discussion?
Mr. President, I'd like for Bob Owens to kind of walk you through why we've asking for the additional amount from the bid.
Yes, thank you. A technical discussion occurred today, and as you might imagine, this is a fairly complex project with a lot of moving parts, literally. And as we've gone through this process and in this conversation today, it was identified that some switches need to be replaced that previously we believed we could keep in place. So with that, that's the reason we're asking for some additional funds to cover that, and if we have any other small things that pop up. This has been a year of discussions. We feel like this should be the final wrap-up on this project, but we appreciate the consideration of the additional funds.
Bob, works to be completed, started and completed by when?
We will be starting work in April. It will be contingent upon the new drive being shipped to us and what that time frame looks like. We expect to have this work completed before or right around Waterworld opening.
Thank you.
Yep.
So Bob, with that extra money, we still want you to try to stay close to the 352.5, but there's some additional money in there as needed.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor of approving the motion to let Bob spend a bunch of money, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So we're now at the committee updates. Margaret, would you like to give a bylaws committee update, please?
The bylaws committee update is we met just prior to this meeting and we're not prepared to give an update.
Capital Projects Committee, Mike, you want to do something on that?
Well, yeah, we met on Monday, February 17th. There was 14 agenda items, various projects in the works. I'm not going to go through all my notes here, but on the disc golf pedestrian bridge, they decided to make the bridge wider for better traffic control and so on. But everything else is kind of in process. Again, I guess maybe the spring Adams County grants, mini grant, fit center pickleball courts, applied for about 25 grand, learn to swim pool and playground equipment, looking for about a 60 to 70% match there. So.
I do have a question. At the last board meeting, we approved a resolution for integrated project delivery, which is how some of our capital projects can now be delivered. And that's different from the design, bid, build. And at the last board meeting, the capital committee hadn't been didn't have the opportunity to discuss what is the difference between that contracting method and the design bid build method. Did you guys discuss any of the risks associated with integrated project delivery and how that differ from design bid build?
No, we didn't discuss it. I think the majority of us are familiar with that process. It's a pretty common process. Again, based on the statutes for these types of organization, in order to apply that type of project management and so on, there had to be a formal resolution by the board. So
Yes.
it's not an
Yeah.
unusual process. A lot of for-profit companies use it. So it just, because there were some bad actors in the past, the state required entities like us to have the board approve it to use that process. But it's a very common process in commercial applications.
Absolutely, but this is the first time we're going to use it here, right? So that we haven't used that process previously. This is.
So I'll maybe jump in here, Margaret. So if you remember that, it was actually been several months ago, we kind of brought to the board the desire to go down a design build route. The project that we're contemplating at Waterworld is a very large, very complex project. And with our experience in building the sports center, we found that there would have been value to have the general contractor working with the designer as it's being designed. There are efficiencies that can be picked up that way and methods that can be identified to help that along. So that is a benefit of doing it with this integrated project delivery, which is another term for design build. Where you have the risk is that you, with a design bid build, you have the price locked in with the bid. Now, so the price is somewhat at risk should items come up, but certainly anything that would come up during construction would have to be brought back to the board, anything material. So both methods have their benefits, both methods have their risks, and that certainly is something we spent some time last fall up at the SDA conference learning about both, and we felt very strongly that this, even though we've never done it this way before, that this was the best option for this project that we're contemplating at Waterworld.
And it's really based on the size, and so we're not going to have a fixed price contract. So there's not like there's not going to be something that comes to us and says, we're going to do this and it's going to be for 10 million. We're going to get a range, is that right? Or how does that work?
Yeah, I believe we will get an estimated price that we will bring back to the board. And then we just actually got some of that information back today, I think, and tomorrow or yesterday and today. Yeah, so it will be somewhat of a hybrid, but we'll come back to the board with this is the estimated price that we have worked with the team on, and anything that varies from that price, we would bring it back to the board.
And the plans could also change mid-project if needed, correct? Is that right? And those will be brought back to the board as well?
Yeah,
Or
I wouldn't say plans would change, there could be change orders, and that would be, but that happened in the other project as well.
okay, because that's what my understanding of the benefit of the integrated
Yes.
project delivery is that you can change to meet unexpected items.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and any changes would still meet the board requirements for approval, depending upon how much they are. So Mike and I are both pretty comfortable with integrative design and how that works. So if it comes up in Capital Projects Committee, we're not very concerned about how that process fits. The other part of the Capital Projects Committee that we have talked about that the board should probably be updated on is that we're having discussions of a survey for the Berkeley Hills Park people. That's not been decided, it's just initial discussions.
I'm glad that your experience with integrated project delivery is so favorable. I have seen very many P3 projects with this delivery device go over budget and over time and have caused headaches. So I'm glad that your experience isn't that.
Well, we could have that experience, we'll just have to see. Right now, we think that it's the right way to go, and it comes back to the board before we approve it. Finance Committee report, update?
Nothing new. Again, the audit engagement letter's been executed. And Skylar and his team will manage the audit. Report to the Finance Committee when it's complete for our review before Finance Committee reports to the full board for approval.
For the Foundation Committee update, we're having some conversations in the Bylaws Committee about where does this actually fit, because it's a whole separate entity. The foundation is separate from the Parks and Rec Board. So we're thinking of moving that Foundation Committee update down to open discussion and just having quick updates, just what's happening with the foundation, just so board members know what's happening with the foundation. So we would say that as far as the foundation goes, the cornhole was a success. The golf is being planned and will continue to be planned. And we certainly appreciate board members helping with whatever they can help with. Danny, do you want to do a lease committee?
We don't have any updates at this time.
All right, Danny, that's correct. We do not. No updates. So now we're at Board of Directors open discussion.
I don't know. I just wanted to let everybody know that the 2024 annual report is available, and this covers all of the activities that we did last year in the strategic plan. I highly recommend you come in and get a copy. Skylar and team, this looks fabulous. It's wonderful, really nice. This is a report that Skylar, I think, implemented a couple years ago and is really just a wonderful overview of what the district does, is, and how it operates. So thank you for all the effort that went into that.
Thank you. So that will be on our website, as well as copies will be available at the Sports Center and Fitness Center. And we also mail that to leaders of municipalities in our district, as well as the county.
I agree. It's a wonderful document. And I particularly like the fact that chicken tenders outsold pizza slices. And you can lay them end to end, and you get many more miles of chicken tenders from a little fun fact there that I would have never known. So Bob, thank you for adding those fun facts. And who would have known that there were 20,491 individual ice cream cones sold? But this is, I digress a little bit, but this is just a wonderful document to talk about what's happened and who we are and what we do and all of the different types of admissions, and look at all those cheeseburgers at Adventure Golf, and it's very simple and very easy to access, so kudos, good job.
Thank you.
Any other open discussion? All right, board meeting action recap.
So I was a little remiss in this. The only thing I have is that we'll need a resolution and guidance for the use restrictions for the next board meeting. Is that right? That's what I have. What did I miss?
That's what I have too, Margaret. I think we're good. Anybody else have something that they heard or want to talk about? All right, then with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thanks, Skylar.